Uber's CEO tries to defend flat rate surge, yet fails after a Washington Post article comes out talking about the difference between what passengers are paying and what drivers are actually making on a surge ride. Hey everyone, my name is Chris and welcome to the RideShare Guy. And today we're going to be going over some tweets that Dara, Uber CEO, had published, and it was in response to a Washington Post article pretty much explaining what goes on with surge and its dynamic pricing and how drivers are not making anywhere near the amount that Uber is making when it comes to what they're charging passengers. So what we got going on for today's video is we're going to go over what Dara tweeted, Harry's response to what Dara tweeted. We're going to do a brief overview and talk about the surge when it comes to what the Washington Post article is, and also explain how surge works when talking from a passenger standpoint and a driver standpoint. And then we'll let you make your own decisions whether Uber is taking more or less than what they should be when it comes to surge rates. So now we're going to go over the different tweets. There are 7 due to a character limit, and he's trying to defend the flat rate surge versus the multiplier surge. So let's get right into it. And it says, yesterday I read the following headline from the Washington Post: "You may be paying more for Uber, but drivers aren't getting their cut of the fare hike. This alarmed me, so I called my team. I knew this wasn't true, but wanted to be sure." The second tweet in this response is, "Here's what I found. Yes, you are probably paying more for rides, but drivers are getting a higher cut of the fare hike." That is very vague because it doesn't give you a specific percentage or anything like that. And it could be, they could be receiving $1 more for that ride, and the passenger might be paying 4 times the amount they normally would. So that is very, very vague when it comes down to it. And again, it's just a lack of transparency. Yes, you are probably paying more for a ride, and the driver is making a little bit more when it comes to what they would normally make, because whenever there is a surge or hot zone, then that means that the driver will make some more, but it's on a flat rate. And we're going to get into that in a little bit. Now, the third message is, here are the raw numbers. In the US, the gross money spent by Uber riders in May was 1.7 times what was spent in January. Over the same period, the gross money that went to drivers increased by 1.8 times. Fares increased by 27%. Driver pay per trip increased by 37%. So one of the big things right here is when you start throwing away multiplier, like 1.7x, 1.8x, and then percentages, it can get a little confusing and it doesn't necessarily make sense. Yes, rides went up from January to now. Why? Specifically because things are reopening and people want to go out and have fun. Drivers are making more because there's surge. Prices have gone up because there is surge. The difference is how much the multiplier could be higher versus how much the flat rate actually is. Also, when it seems like drivers are making 1.8 times the amount, that probably is not because of anything with surge related, but it could include things like bonuses. It could include bonuses that drivers are coming back onto the platform and receiving, or new drivers altogether are receiving, or just ride bonuses that they might be having or promotions that they might be having. So those types of things are not necessarily accounted for when it comes to what the surge actually is. Going to the fourth message, it says the body of this article is well researched and discusses our decoupling surge, higher rider prices from driver pay per trip in California. This is how it works in all other states. We do so not to increase our cut, but to match supply and demand more efficiently per trip. Now, first off, that is not how the article was. The article was talking about how passengers pay for the ride is not necessarily associated and decoupled from what the driver makes. This used to be different because it used to be 80-20 split, where a driver would make 80% of whatever the passenger paid and Uber would make 20%. It later switched to 75-25, where the driver again would make 75% of the fare and Uber would collect 25%. Once upfront pricing came in 2016, this did not include surge, but in his tweet, he's talking about decoupling surge. The article didn't reference it that way. The article referenced how pay is when it comes to being decoupled. So that means what the rider pays and sees upfront is not necessarily coupled with what the driver actually drives. The driver gets paid on a per minute, per mile basis, but it does not necessarily equate to how passengers are getting the prices that they're getting. I'm not really sure where he went with that one, because it's talking about surge going from multiplier, which was in California, because of AB5 in place, and Uber was trying to make it look like drivers were more independent so they wouldn't pass that ABC test and have to reclassify drivers as employees. But in fact, they actually went to the flat rate surge after Prop 22 went in place because, well, AB5 didn't matter at that point anymore. So then the fifth message goes on and says, so I got the same stats for California. Did decoupling surge unintentionally hurt California drivers? From January to May, gross money spent by California riders was up 2.2 times, while gross money paid to drivers was up 2.6 times. Bottom line, the increase in the ratio of pay was higher in California than nationwide. Now, the sixth tweet says, I'll acknowledge we didn't share these numbers with the post, but we did explain how surge works and that our take rate has not gone up. I don't know whether these numbers would have produced a different headline, but I believe the one they ran with has little bearing to the facts. And then the seventh message she tweeted was, the facts show that decoupling surge in California didn't reduce drivers' share. In fact, we've told investors that our take rate will go down in Q2. We're trying to do the right thing in balancing the marketplace in a way that works for everyone. And in this case, I believe we are. So that is Dara's 7 tweets that he had tweeted out in response to the Washington Post article, claiming that Uber is taking more and more and drivers are getting paid less and less when it comes to these surge prices. Now, Harry's response to this is, on an individual trip level, this headline is 100% true since Uber pays a flat rate surge to drivers. So on an outlier surge ride for the passenger of, say, 4 times or $100, driver will get a base of $25 plus flat rate surge that varies, but in the $5 to $15 range. So Uber's take rate on this trip is huge. And yes, there has been screenshots posted to many different places, whether it's Reddit, Facebook groups, showing what Uber's take is, what the passenger is actually paying versus what the driver is actually making. And some of these rides you can see are substantial. Now, those might be the outlier cases, but either way, it's not paid the same because you're getting a flat rate surge versus the multiplier surge that the passenger is actually going to be paying, which will lead me to how surge works. So how surge works is based on real-time data. It's dynamic pricing. And what it means is that if there's more rides coming in and less drivers available in that area, surge and dynamic pricing is going to rise. So that means whatever you're paying for a normal rate at a normal time is going to go higher. The passenger is going to pay something based on a multiple. So that means it might be 1.4 times the amount. So if you have a $10 ride and 1.4, you're paying $14. If you see something like a 3.5 times, now you're paying $35. If you're seeing something like a 6 times, now you're paying $60 for that same $10 ride that you normally would have had at a normal time. Now, the driver doesn't see that multiplier surge any longer. They changed to something called flat rate surge. So that means driver has a map and they're able to see these surge zones and they're able to see how much the surge zone is depending on where they are and if it's busy in their particular area. So they might see something where it could be like $1.50, which means you'll get $1.50 tacked on to that ride, no matter how far you go in terms of shortness. But if it does go longer or it's a longer distance ride, then Uber will actually adjust it. So it's more in line with what the passenger is actually paying versus just paying out $1.50. because, well, that really wouldn't be fair. Now, there also could be times where you could see $3, $5, $10. So let's go back to that same $10 example. If a passenger pays $10 normally, let's say a driver is going to make $6. So we'll just use that as an example. If that particular ride came in and let's say it was 6 times, that passenger is now paying $60 for that same $10 ride, and the driver might be making $8 in flat rate surge. So that same 6 plus $8 would then equal 14. And you can see where there's a much bigger discrepancy between how much that passenger is paying versus what that driver is actually making. Now, those numbers are hypothetical. So the only way to actually see that is going into the app and seeing what you're getting paid and what the passenger's paying, or passengers and drivers can compare notes and see exactly what's going on for real-time data. Now, don't get me wrong, flat rate surge does have its benefits, and the flat rate surge has its benefits only really when the price is right and the distance is short. That's really the only time. But once you start getting into lower surge rates or longer rides, the multiplier would be much better, and it would be much better coupled. But now let's hear from you. What are you actually seeing? So for passengers who might be watching this particular video, what rates are you seeing in terms of normal to what you're paying right now? How much would you say is a difference? And then drivers, what are you seeing? How much more money do you see Uber taking versus what you're making? If you have screenshots or anything like that, let us know. But if you just want to share that information in the comments below, that would be greatly appreciated. And if you made it through this entire video, if you haven't smashed that like button yet, what are you waiting for? Smash it. And also, like I said, share your comments. And also, if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, I don't know why you haven't, but there's awesome and great information within the rideshare community, within the changes that Uber and Lyft make, as well as the entire gig economy. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, make sure you ring the bell for notifications, and it will notify you every time new videos are uploaded. All right, everyone, drive safe.